The scent of beeswax and aged parchment clung to my fingers as I carefully set down the last set of restoration tools. Another 12-hour day at the Metropolitan Archives Conservation Lab. Another stack of letters saved from oblivion. My lower back ached. My eyes burned from squinting at faded ink under the magnifying lamp. But there was a quiet satisfaction in knowing that someone's words, someone's love, would survive another century. I was gathering my things when my supervisor, Margaret, appeared in the doorway of the tiny workspace I'd claimed as my own. "Clara, before you go, there's a charity auction tomorrow night at the Grandview Hotel. Religious antiquities. Thought you might want to attend, given your specialization." I glanced at my worn canvas bag, mentally calculating the $43 I had left until next Friday's paycheck. Between Grandma Vera's medications and the rising cost of her assisted living facility, charity auctions weren't exactly in my budget. "I'll think about it," I said, forcing a smile. Margaret's knowing look told me she understood. "It's a good cause. Proceeds go to restoring historical churches in immigrant neighborhoods." She paused. "And there's a rosary in the catalog that reminded me of something. Can't quite place it, but I thought you'd appreciate seeing it." After she left, I locked up the lab and took the bus across town to Grandma Vera's facility. At 78, her memory was fading like the documents I spent my days restoring, but her spirit remained fierce. I found her in the common room, working on a jigsaw puzzle with trembling hands. "Clarushka," she said, using the diminutive from my childhood, her Russian accent still thick after 50 years in America. "You look tired. Are you eating enough?" I kissed her papery cheek and sat beside her, helping to fit a piece into place. "I eat plenty, babushka." "How are you feeling?" She waved a dismissive hand. "Old, but alive, which is something." Her eyes, still sharp despite the fog settling over her mind, studied my face. "You work too much. When will you find a nice young man? Give me great-grandchildren." I laughed softly. "When I have time to meet anyone who isn't dead and preserved in a file cabinet. Your mama, God rest her. She would want you to have a life beyond those dusty papers." The familiar pang of loss squeezed my chest. Mom had been gone 6 years now, taken by the same cancer that had claimed my father when I was 12. Grandma Vera was all the family I had left, and I would work myself to dust before I let her down. That night, in my studio apartment that barely fit a bed and a kitchenette, I pulled up the auction catalog on my laptop. The religious antiquities collection was impressive. 16th century prayer books, Byzantine icons, rosaries made from everything from olive wood to coral. And then I saw it. The photograph was small, the item listed simply as Lot 47, Mother of Pearl Rosary, circa 1950s, Eastern European origin. But I recognized it immediately. The distinctive hand-carved beads, each one slightly irregular, the particular shade of iridescence, the delicate silver crucifix with its unique filigree work. My heart began to pound as I crossed to the filing cabinet where I kept copies of particularly memorable restoration projects. 3 months ago, I'd worked on a collection of letters, dozens of them, all written in Russian, never sent. They'd been discovered in the estate sale of an elderly woman, and the Historical Society had hired me to preserve and translate them. The letters had been from a mother to her son. Beautiful, heartbreaking letters spanning 15 years. Each one expressing love, regret, longing for reconciliation. She'd written about her family, their immigration from Russia, the hardships and joys. And in several letters, she'd mentioned a rosary, her mother's rosary, made of mother of pearl, which she prayed with every night, asking God to protect her son and bring him home. The son's name had been Andrei. I pulled out the file and found the photographs I'd taken of the letters for my records. There, in one of them, a faded reference. "I keep your grandmother's rosary safe, Andreyusha, the one with the beads like moonlight. When you come back to me, I will give it to you, as she gave it to me." The woman had died before ever sending the letters. The collection had been donated anonymously, and I'd never learned what happened to her son, or why they'd been estranged. But now her rosary was being auctioned off, about to be scattered into the world like so many relics of broken families I encountered in my work. I looked at my bank account. $217. The auction started bids at $50 for most items. If I was careful, if I didn't eat out, if I stretched everything else, I could afford to go, to at least try. Grandma Vera's voice echoed in my mind. Some things are worth more than money, Klarushka. Some things are matters of the soul. The next evening, I stood outside the Grandview Hotel in my only nice dress, a simple navy blue sheath I'd bought secondhand for Mom's funeral and hadn't worn since. The lobby blazed with chandeliers, filled with people whose jewelry probably cost more than I made in a year. I clutched my small purse and tried not to feel like an imposter. The auction room was elegant, chairs arranged in neat rows before a raised platform. I chose a seat near the back, studying the crowd. These were people accustomed to spending money on beautiful things, on pieces of history they would display in their homes and forget about. I wondered if any of them felt the weight of the stories behind these objects, the hands that had held them, the prayers whispered over them. The auctioneer, a distinguished man in his 60s, took the podium and began the proceedings. Items moved quickly. Prayer books going for hundreds, icons for thousands. I watched, my stomach knotting with each passing lot. Then lot 47 was brought forward, displayed on a velvet cushion under the lights. The mother-of-pearl beads seemed to glow from within, each one catching the light and throwing it back in soft rainbows. Lot 47, the auctioneer announced. A lovely vintage rosary, mother-of-pearl and silver, Eastern European craftsmanship. We'll start the bidding at $50. A paddle went up immediately. 50. 75, another voice called. My hand trembled as I raised my own paddle. 100. Heads turned toward me, assessing. A woman in diamonds raised her paddle. 150. I thought of the letters, of a mother's desperate love, of prayers said over these beads for a son who never came home. 200. The room fell quiet. The woman in diamonds hesitated, then lowered her paddle with a dismissive wave, as if I'd somehow spoiled the fun by caring too much. 200 going once, the auctioneer said. Twice. Sold to the young lady in the back. I sat frozen as the reality hit me. I'd just spent nearly every dollar I had on a rosary that wasn't mine, for a man I'd never met, because of letters that had broken my heart months ago. After the auction ended, I approached the payment table with shaking hands, my card barely covering the total with tax. The clerk handed me a small velvet box containing the rosary. Beautiful piece, she said. Family heirloom? Something like that, I replied softly. I was heading toward the exit when a man stepped into my path. He was tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in a perfectly tailored black suit that screamed money and power. Dark hair, gray eyes the color of winter storms, a face that might have been handsome if not for the hardness etched into every line. He moved with the controlled grace of someone accustomed to command, to being obeyed without question. "Excuse me," I said, trying to step around him. His hand shot out, not grabbing me but blocking my path. "The rosary you just purchased, where did you find it?" I blinked, startled by the intensity in his voice, the barely restrained emotion beneath his controlled exterior. I bought it at the auction, just now." "I know that." His accent was slight but unmistakable, Russian, like Grandma Vera's, like the letters. "I mean, how did you know about it? Why did you buy it?" My fingers tightened protectively around the velvet box. "That's my business." "Everything in this building is my business," he said quietly, dangerously. "I organized this auction. That rosary was part of a donated collection, and I want to know why you just spent money you clearly don't have on something that should mean nothing to you." Heat flooded my cheeks, embarrassment and anger mixing equally. How dare he assume, how dare he judge? "You don't know anything about me. I know you're wearing a dress that's been altered twice to fit you, that your shoes are resoled, that you counted your money 3 times before bidding, and that you're holding that box like it contains something precious." His eyes bored into mine. "So I'll ask again. Why?" For a moment, I considered lying, brushing past him, keeping my reasons to myself. But something in his face, in the raw need beneath the cold authority, stopped me. "Because someone needs to return it to you, Andre," I said quietly. The color drained from his face. His hand, still raised between us, began to tremble. "What did you call me?" I opened the velvet box and held out the rosary. The beads caught the light, glowing like captured moonlight, just as his mother had described in her letters. "Your mother's rosary," I said, "the one her mother gave her, the one she prayed over every night, asking God to bring you home." Andrei Petrov stared at the rosary, then at me, his expression shifting from shock to something raw and wounded. His hand closed around mine, not taking the rosary but holding it, and me, in place. "How?" The word was barely a whisper. "How did you know?" I met his stormy eyes and saw, beneath the hard exterior, beneath the power and control, a son who had lost his mother before making peace, who carried that grief like stones in his pockets. "Because I restore what's broken," I said simply. "It's what I do. And your mother's letters told me everything I needed to know to recognize this when I saw it." His grip on my hand tightened, not painfully, but desperately, as if I were the only solid thing in a world suddenly tilted off its axis. "Tell me everything," he said, his voice rough. "Tell me every word she wrote." Andrei Petrov released my hand only to gesture to one of the men in black suits stationed around the ballroom. Security, I realized. His security. "Maxim, clear the library. Now." Within minutes, I found myself in a private room off the main hall, a gentleman's library with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, leather chairs, and a fireplace that crackled with real flames. Andrei paced before the windows, the rosary clutched in his fist, while I perched on the edge of a chair, my purse in my lap like a shield. "Start from the beginning," he said without looking at me. "How did you get my mother's letters?" I took a breath, ordering my thoughts. 3 months ago, the Metropolitan Historical Society acquired a collection of personal correspondence from an estate sale. Anonymous seller. My job was to preserve the documents and provide translations where needed. The letters were all written in Russian, all from a mother to her son, spanning from 2003 to 2018. None of them had ever been sent. He turned toward me then, his face carved from stone. 2018. She died in 2018. "I'm sorry," I said softly, meaning it. "What did the letters say?" I closed my eyes, remembering the hours I'd spent with those pages, the tears I'd shed over someone else's grief. She wrote about her life, her memories of Russia, of immigrating here with your father. She wrote about how proud she was of you as a boy, how smart you were, how determined. I paused. "And she wrote about how much it hurt when you stopped coming to see her." Andrei's jaw clenched. "Go on." "She never blamed you. That was clear in every letter. She blamed herself for not understanding your choices, for trying to pull you back when you needed to move forward. She wrote about praying with her mother's rosary every night, asking God to keep you safe, to help you find peace, to bring you back to her before it was too late." "It was too late," he said bitterly. "I didn't go back. Not until I got the call that she was gone." I opened my eyes, and found him watching me with such naked pain that I had to look away. The last letter was dated 2 weeks before she died. She wrote that she'd tried to call you, but your number had changed. She'd tried to visit your office, but security wouldn't let her up. She wrote... My voice caught. She wrote that she understood you'd become someone important, someone too busy for an old woman's memories, but that she would keep praying for you anyway because that's what mothers do. Andre turned back to the window, his shoulders rigid. For a long moment, silence filled the room except for the crackling fire. When he spoke again, his voice was rough. I changed my number because rivals kept finding me through her. I told security to turn her away because she kept asking questions I couldn't answer. About my business, about the people I worked with. I told myself I was protecting her by keeping my distance. Maybe you were, I said quietly. No. The word was sharp, final. I was protecting myself. From her disappointment. From having to lie to her face about what I'd become. He turned to face me fully. Do you know who I am? What I do? I met his gaze steadily. I know you organized a charity auction to restore immigrant churches. I know you have enough money and power to clear a room with a word. I know you're holding your mother's rosary like it's the most precious thing in the world. I paused. I know your mother loved you without condition, and that you loved her enough to grieve for 15 years. Something shifted in his expression, a crack in the armor. You don't know half of it. Then tell me, I said. Or don't. But I didn't spend my last $200 on that rosary to watch you torture yourself over what you can't change. A ghost of a smile touched his lips, there and gone. $200. That was everything you had. Not everything. I kept enough for bus fare home and maybe a can of soup. He moved closer, his presence overwhelming in the intimate space. Why? You didn't know me. You had no reason to care about returning some dead woman's rosary to her estranged son. I stood, needing to meet him at something closer to eye level, though he still towered over me. Because I spend my days restoring things that matter to people who are gone. Letters that were never sent. Photographs that no one remembers. Journals that tell stories no one else will ever hear. And sometimes, just sometimes, I get the chance to give something back to the living, to close a circle that should never have been broken. Andre reached out slowly, as if I might bolt, and took my hand in his. His palm was warm, calloused in a way that suggested he wasn't afraid of physical work, despite his obvious wealth. What's your name? Clara. Clara Sokolov. Russian, he observed. 3rd generation. My grandmother is from Moscow originally. He nodded slowly, his thumb tracing absent patterns on the back of my hand. Clara Sokolov, who spends her last $200 on a stranger's grief. What do you want in return? Nothing, I said honestly. It's yours. It should have been yours all along. Nothing, he repeated, as if testing the word for deception. Everyone wants something. Then I want you to stop punishing yourself for 5 minutes and let yourself feel something besides guilt, I said, my patience fraying. I want you to look at that rosary and remember that your mother loved you, not that you failed her. I want you to... He kissed me. It wasn't gentle or tentative. It was desperate, searching, as if he were trying to find something solid in a world that had just shifted beneath his feet. His free hand cupped my face, his thumb brushing my cheekbone, and for a moment I forgot how to breathe, forgot everything except the warmth of his mouth and the rosary beads pressing between our joined hands. Then he pulled back, his breathing ragged. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have... It's okay, I whispered, my own heart hammering. It's not okay. You did something kind and I... He released my hand and stepped back, running his fingers through his hair. You should go, before I do something else I'll regret. I picked up my purse, my legs unsteady. Mr. Petrov. Andrei? He corrected roughly. After what just happened, you can call me Andrei. Andrei, then. The letters are at the Metropolitan Archives. If you want to read them yourself, I can arrange access. They're yours by right. He looked at me, really looked at me, as if seeing me for the first time. You would do that? Let me read my mother's words? They were always meant for you. He crossed to a desk in the corner and pulled out a business card, writing something on the back. This is my private number. Call me tomorrow. I'll send a car. I took the card, our fingers brushing. A car isn't necessary. I can take the bus. Humor me, he said, a note of command creeping back into his voice. Let me do this one thing to thank you. I nodded, recognizing that arguing would be futile. At the door, I paused. Andrei? She would have forgiven you. Whatever you think you did wrong, whatever kept you apart, she already forgave you. It's in every letter. His eyes glistened, but no tears fell. How do you know? Because that's what mothers do, I said, echoing his mother's own words from her final letter. I left him standing in the library, the rosary still clutched in his hand. His mother's love finally returned to its rightful home. The next morning, I woke to 17 missed calls and a text from a number I didn't recognize. The car will be there at 10. Don't make me come get you. AP. I stared at my phone, torn between irritation at his high-handedness and something else. Something warmer and more dangerous. Andrei Petrov was clearly a man accustomed to getting what he wanted, used to wielding power like a weapon. Everything about him screamed danger, and yet, I couldn't stop thinking about the way he'd held that rosary. The raw grief in his eyes. The desperate kiss that had tasted of longing and loss. At 9:45, I was dressed in my work clothes, practical slacks, a simple blouse, comfortable shoes, when my phone rang. Grandma Vera's facility. Ms. Sokolov, your grandmother had a fall this morning. She's okay, but we think she needs to be seen by a doctor. Her insurance won't cover the urgent care visit unless you authorize it first. And my heart sank. I'd put the copay on my credit card last month, maxing it out. This month's payment wasn't due until Friday, but I didn't have the funds to cover another emergency visit. How much? I asked, though I already knew the answer would be more than I had. $75 copay, plus any additional treatment. I closed my eyes. The universe had a cruel sense of timing. A knock at my door startled me. I opened it to find a driver in a black suit, professional and expressionless. Ms. Sokolov, Mr. Petrov sent me. I need 5 minutes, I said, my mind racing through impossible calculations. The driver nodded and stepped back politely. I returned to my phone. I'll be there as soon as I can. Tell Grandma Vera I'm coming. I grabbed my purse and the file containing copies of the letters, my heart heavy with the knowledge that I'd have to cancel on Andrei, have to explain that real life had intruded on whatever strange connection we'd forged last night. In the car, I pulled out Andrei's card and dialed his private number. He answered on the first ring. Second thoughts already? His voice was dry, almost amused. My grandmother had a fall. I need to get to the urgent care facility. I'm sorry, but I have to cancel. Silence. Then, which facility? St. Catherine's on. I know where it is. Stay in the car. We're going there now. Andrei, I can't ask you to... You didn't ask. I'm offering. His voice softened slightly. Your grandmother is all you have left. I understand what that means. 20 minutes later, the car pulled up to St. Catherine's. I found Grandma Vera in the waiting room, her wrist wrapped in an ace bandage, looking more annoyed than hurt. Klarushka, such a fuss over nothing, she grumbled in Russian. I slipped on wet floor. I'm old, not glass. I hugged her carefully, relief flooding through me. Let me see. Before I could move toward the check-in desk, Andre walked through the entrance. In daylight, he was even more imposing. The expensive suit, the commanding presence, the way people automatically moved out of his path. He came straight to us, his gaze assessing Grandma Vera with the efficiency of someone used to evaluating situations quickly. Then he did something I didn't expect. He knelt before her chair and spoke in perfect Russian. Zdravstvuyte, babushka. Ja, Andrei. Pожалуйста, позвольте мне помочь. Hello, grandmother. I'm Andre. Please, let me help. Grandma Vera's eyes widened, then narrowed shrewdly. Russian boy with expensive suit. You are Clara's friend, Andre supplied smoothly. She helped me with something important. Now I help her. Before I could protest, he'd spoken to the admissions desk, and Grandma Vera was being ushered back for x-rays, all paperwork and payment mysteriously handled. I stood in the waiting room, torn between gratitude and unease. When Andre returned to my side, I said quietly, I can't let you pay for this. It's already done. Then I'll pay you back, every penny. He studied me with those storm gray eyes. If it makes you feel better to believe that, fine. But I don't want your money, Clara. Then what do you want? The words came out sharper than I intended. He reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind my ear, the gesture achingly gentle. I want to read my mother's letters. I want you to show me what you saved of her. And then... He paused, his jaw tightening. Then I want to figure out why a woman who barely knows me would spend her last dollar on a dead woman's prayers. Because some things matter more than money, I said, echoing Grandma Vera's words. Yes, he agreed softly. They do. And I'm beginning to think you're one of them. Grandma Vera's wrist was only sprained, not broken. A small mercy I thanked God for as Andre's driver took us back to her facility. She dozed against my shoulder in the back seat, pain medication making her drowsy, while Andre sat across from us, his presence filling the confined space. She reminds me of my mother, he said quietly, watching her sleep. Same stubbornness, same fire in her eyes. She raised me after my parents died, I said. Taught me Russian, taught me that family is everything, that you take care of your own no matter what. Your parents? His gaze sharpened with interest. Dad died of a heart attack when I was 12. Mom followed 6 years later. Cancer. I stroked Grandma Vera's silver hair gently. She's all I have left. Understanding flickered across his face. That's why you spent $200 on a rosary for a stranger's mother, because you know what it means to lose one. Partly, I admitted, but also because your mother's letters broke my heart. The love in them, the forgiveness, the hope that never quite died. I couldn't let that end up in some collector's drawer, forgotten. Andre was quiet for a long moment. I need to read them. All of them. I'll arrange it, tomorrow if you want. My supervisor will let you into the conservation lab after hours. It's private, quiet. No, he said firmly. You'll bring them to me, to my home. I want you there when I read them. I started to protest, but something in his expression stopped me. Not command this time, but a raw vulnerability that reminded me of the man who'd held his mother's rosary like a lifeline. Why do you want me there? I asked softly. Because you knew her through those letters in a way I never did. Because I might need someone to explain things I don't understand. Because... He looked away, jaw tight. Because I don't want to be alone when I face what I've been avoiding for 15 years. How could I refuse that kind of honesty? After settling Grandma Vera back in her room, I returned to the car where Andre waited. Tomorrow evening, I said, I'll bring everything I have. Copies of the letters, the photographs I took for documentation, my translation notes. "Tomorrow," he agreed. "Maxime will pick you up at 7. Wear something comfortable. This will take hours." I nodded, suddenly nervous about entering Andrei Petrov's home, his private space. Everything about him suggested danger, power, secrets I had no business knowing. But I'd already committed, already let myself care about his grief. That night I lay awake in my narrow bed, thinking about the way he'd kissed me, the way he'd knelt before Grandma Vera and spoken Russian like a grandson offering respect. Who was Andrei Petrov, really? The commanding figure who cleared rooms with a word, or the grieving son who'd held his mother's rosary with trembling hands? The next evening, I dressed in simple black pants and a soft gray sweater, pulling my hair back in a neat bun. Professional, appropriate. I told myself this was just work, just helping someone understand their mother's last words. The kiss in the library had been an aberration, a moment of emotion that meant nothing. Maxim arrived exactly at 7 in the same black sedan. We drove through the city as dusk fell, past the glittering downtown, into an older neighborhood of elegant townhouses and tree-lined streets. The car stopped before a restored brownstone, its facade a perfect blend of historical detail and modern security. Andrei opened the door himself before I could knock. He'd changed from his suit into dark slacks and a charcoal sweater that emphasized the breadth of his shoulders. His hair was slightly damp, as if he'd recently showered, and I caught the scent of sandalwood and something uniquely him. "Clara," he said, my name a low rumble. "Come in." The interior took my breath away. Where I'd expected cold minimalism or ostentatious wealth, I found warmth. Hardwood floors covered with Persian rugs, built-in bookshelves filled with volumes that showed signs of actually being read, comfortable furniture arranged around a fireplace. Art lined the walls, not pretentious modern pieces but religious icons, similar to those I worked with at the archives. "You collect," I said, drawn immediately to a beautiful Byzantine icon of the Virgin Mary. "I do," he confirmed, watching me study the piece. "Religious art, mostly. Icons, illuminated manuscripts, reliquaries, things that connected people to something greater than themselves." I turned to face him, understanding dawning. "That's why you organized the auction. It wasn't just charity." "No," he agreed. "It was penance. My mother was devout. She believed that beauty and service of faith could redeem even the worst sins." His mouth twisted bitterly. "I'm still testing that theory." I set my bag down on the coffee table and withdrew the folder containing the letters. "These are copies. The originals are in climate-controlled storage at the archives. I thought it would be easier if you could hold them, mark them if you wanted." Andrei took the folder with both hands, as if it contained something fragile beyond measure. He sank onto the sofa, opening it slowly. I sat beside him, close enough to point out details, but giving him space to absorb the words. The first letter was dated March 15th, 2003. His mother's handwriting was elegant, old-fashioned, the Russian cursive flowing across the page in dark blue ink. "My dearest Andreyusha," Andrei read aloud, his voice rough. "It has been 6 months since I saw you. Your father would be proud of your success, but I think he would also worry, as I do, that you are forgetting who you are in pursuit of who you wish to become." He stopped, swallowing hard. I waited, silent. "She knew," he said quietly. "Even then, she knew I was changing, becoming someone else." "She loved you anyway," I pointed out gently. "Read the next part." He continued, haltingly at first, then with growing steadiness. His mother wrote about her garden, about the neighbor's cat that kept stealing her tomatoes, about the prayer group she'd joined at church. Small, ordinary things that created a portrait of a life lived quietly, patiently, hopefully. And in every letter, She mentioned the Rosary. I prayed for you with Mama's Rosary tonight. The beads are smooth from so many years of prayers, from my mother's hands, and now mine. One day I hope to place them in yours, to teach you the prayers as my mother taught me. Andre's hand tightened on the pages. I never learned them. She tried to teach me when I was young, but I thought I'd outgrown such things. I thought prayer was for the weak, for people who couldn't control their own destinies. And now? I asked. He looked at me, his eyes dark with something I couldn't name. Now I think prayer might be the only honest thing left in a life built on lies. We read through the letters chronologically. I watched his face as the years unfolded in his mother's words. Her hope gradually tempered by resignation, her love never wavering, but her expectations lowering. She wrote less about waiting for his visits, and more about accepting his absence. The prayers became her way of maintaining connection, the Rosary her physical link to a son she could no longer reach. By the 10th letter, dated 2012, Andre's hands were shaking. She tried to come to my office, I remember. I told security to turn her away, told them I was too busy for unannounced visitors. He laughed bitterly. Too busy to see my own mother. You can't change it, I said gently. You can only understand why she forgave you. He set down the letters and stood, pacing to the window that overlooked a small garden. I was 22 when my father died. Heart attack, sudden, brutal. I'd just started working for the Kozlov organization. Import-export, they called it, though everyone knew what we really imported. My father had warned me away from that life, begged me to use my education for something legitimate. But I was young and angry, and I wanted power fast. I remained silent, letting him speak. Within 5 years, I'd risen high enough to make enemies, men who would use anyone I loved as leverage against me. So I pushed everyone away, changed my number, moved to places she couldn't find me. Kept her at a distance I told myself was protection. He turned to face me. But really, I just couldn't stand the disappointment in her eyes, couldn't face what I'd become. What did you become? I asked quietly. He crossed to a cabinet and poured himself vodka, neat. A man who traded in violence and fear. A man who hurt people for profit. A man who told himself the ends justified the means until he couldn't remember what the ends were anymore. And now? Now I'm a man trying to buy his way into redemption through charity auctions and art collections. He downed the vodka in one swallow. Now I'm a man who kissed a complete stranger because she showed him more kindness in 5 minutes than he'd known in 15 years. I stood and crossed to him, taking the empty glass from his hand. You're also a man who paid for my grandmother's medical care without being asked, who organizes auctions to restore immigrant churches, who collects religious art because it reminds you that beauty can redeem. I paused. Your mother saw that in you, Andre. That's why she never stopped praying. He looked at me, really looked at me, as if trying to understand some puzzle I represented. Who are you, Clara Sokolov? What kind of woman spends her last dollar on a stranger's grief and then stands in that stranger's home defending him to himself? The kind who believes people can change, I said simply. The kind who thinks it's never too late for redemption if you're willing to do the work. And if the work is impossible, if the damage is too deep, then you do it anyway, because the alternative is giving up, and your mother didn't raise you to be a quitter. Something cracked in his expression, the carefully maintained control finally breaking. He pulled me into his arms, not kissing me this time, but simply holding me, his face pressed into my hair, his breath ragged against my neck. Stay, he whispered. Please, help me read the rest. I can't do this alone. I wrapped my arms around him, feeling the solid strength of him, the warmth of a man who'd been cold for too long. I'll stay as long as you need, We returned to the sofa and continued reading. The letters grew more poignant as the years passed, his mother's health declining, her references to mortality increasing. But the love never wavered, never diminished. Each letter ended the same way. I pray for you with the Rosary. I pray for your safety, your happiness, your peace. I pray that one day you will find your way home. The final letter, dated 2 weeks before her death, was the shortest. My dearest Andreyusha, I tried to call, but your number has changed again. I tried to visit, but they say you are too important now for unannounced visitors. I understand. You have built something great, and I am proud, even if I do not understand the world you live in. I keep your grandmother's rosary safe. The beads are worn smooth from prayers. When you are ready, when you need to find your way home, it will be here waiting, as will I, for as long as God grants me breath. All my love, Mama. Andre's tears fell silently onto the page, darkening the ink. I didn't try to comfort him, didn't offer empty platitudes. Some grief needed to be felt fully, completely, before healing could begin. When he finally looked up, his eyes were red-rimmed but clear. She died alone in a hospital. I got the call from her priest. By the time I arrived, she was already gone. The rosary was in her hands. And then? I asked gently. Then I arranged a funeral, paid for everything, stood at her grave and felt nothing because I'd gotten so good at feeling nothing. He wiped his eyes roughly. The estate sale was handled by lawyers. I never went to the house, never looked through her things. I couldn't face the life I'd abandoned. But you kept the rosary. The priest gave it to me at the funeral, said she'd wanted me to have it. I put it in a drawer and tried to forget. He laughed bitterly. Until it showed up at my own charity auction, donated by some anonymous seller who was probably clearing out storage units. I understood now, the universe's cruel poetry, bringing his mother's prayers back to him through the very event he'd organized to assuage his guilt. She would have loved this, I said, gesturing to the room, the icons, the evidence of faith he'd surrounded himself with. She would have seen it as God answering her prayers, bringing you back to the things that matter. Andre took my hand, threading his fingers through mine. I want to hire you. I blinked, startled by the sudden change. What? My collection. It's large, scattered across 3 properties, poorly cataloged. I need someone who understands the pieces, their history, their significance. Someone who can organize them properly. Restore what needs restoration. He paused. Someone I can trust to see the beauty rather than the price tag. Andre, I have a job. I can't just... Name your price. I'll triple what you make at the archives. Full benefits, flexible hours so you can care for your grandmother. A workspace designed exactly how you need it. His grip tightened. Please, Clara. Let me do this. Let me give you something back. I should have said no. Should have recognized the danger of tangling my life with his, of stepping further into a world I didn't understand. But looking at him, seeing the hope mixed with the grief, I couldn't. One condition, I said. You keep reading your mother's letters. All of them. As many times as it takes for you to truly hear what she was saying. And you let me teach you the rosary prayers. The ones she wanted to share with you. His eyes widened. You know them? Grandma Vera taught me. In Russian, the way her mother taught her. The old way. I smiled slightly. Consider it part of the job. Andre pulled me closer, resting his forehead against mine. You're going to save me, aren't you, Clara Sokolov? No, I whispered. I'm going to help you save yourself. There's a difference. He kissed me then, soft and searching, and I let myself fall into it, into him, into the dangerous warmth of a man who was broken but fighting to heal. I gave my notice at the Metropolitan Archives the following week. Margaret was disappointed but understanding when I explained the opportunity. A private collection in need of professional cataloging, a salary that would finally let me breathe, hours flexible enough to care for Grandma Vera. I didn't tell her whose collection it was. Didn't mention Andrei Petrov or the Rosary or the letters that had somehow woven my life into his. Andrei converted a sun-drenched room on the 3rd floor of his brownstone into a conservation workspace for me. Everything I could need, archival supplies, proper lighting, climate control, a work table designed to my exact specifications. He'd even had a comfortable chair delivered for when I needed to sit and study pieces closely. "This is too much," I'd protested when he first showed me the space. "It's practical," he'd countered, though the pleased smile on his face suggested otherwise. "If you're going to properly catalog decades of acquisitions, you need proper tools." The collection itself was staggering. Icons from Russia, Greece, Ethiopia, illuminated manuscripts from medieval monasteries, reliquaries containing fragments of saints' bones, crucifixes carved from olive wood, prayer books worn soft by centuries of hands. Each piece had a story, a history of faith and devotion that I carefully documented. And through it all, Andrei was present, not hovering, but available, learning alongside me as I explained the significance of each piece, the traditions behind them, the prayers they'd inspired. Every evening, after the day's work ended, I taught him the Rosary prayers in Russian. We'd sit in his study, the mother-of-pearl beads between us, and I'd guide him through the ancient words his mother had wanted him to know. "Otche nash," I'd begin. "Our Father." "Otche nash, ije esi na nebesek," he'd repeat, his pronunciation rough at first, but improving with practice. His mother's prayers, finally spoken by her son. Some nights, he'd tell me stories about his father, about growing up caught between Russian tradition and American ambition, about the choices that had led him into the Kozlov organization and the violence that had followed. "I've done things I can never undo," he said one evening, as rain pattered against the windows. "Hurt people who didn't deserve it, made decisions that destroyed lives. I can buy all the icons I want, fund all the churches in the world, but it won't wash the blood off my hands." "No," I agreed quietly. "It won't. But it might create enough good to balance the scales, to give meaning to the years you have left." He looked at me across the rosary beads. "You don't fear me. Why?" I considered the question carefully. "Because I see who you were, who you are, and who you're trying to become. And the man trying to become better is more compelling than the man who's given up. You have too much faith in me." "Maybe," I admitted. "Or maybe your mother's prayers are finally being answered, and you're just too stubborn to recognize grace when it finds you." He smiled at that, a real smile that transformed his face, making him look younger, less burdened. Grace, in the form of a stubborn archivist who spent her last dollar on a rosary. Stranger things have happened. As weeks turned into months, something shifted between us, the careful distance we'd maintained eroding as trust deepened. He'd brush past me in the conservation room, his hand lingering on my waist. I'd catch him watching me work, his expression soft with something that looked dangerously like affection. Grandma Vera noticed immediately when I brought him to visit her. "This is the Russian boy?" she asked in Russian, her sharp eyes assessing him. "The one who paid for my doctor?" "Yes, babushka," I confirmed, also in Russian. "This is Andrei Petrov. He's my employer." "Employer," she repeated skeptically, switching to English for his benefit. "You look at her like employer looks at employee? I think not." Andrei had the grace to look embarrassed, a faint color rising in his cheeks. Your granddaughter is very talented, Mrs. Sokolova. I'm fortunate to have her expertise. Humph. Grandma Vera studied him shrewdly. You are good to her? You treat her with respect? I try to be worthy of her presence, he said, his sincerity evident. She's teaching me to be better than I was. That seemed to satisfy her. She patted his hand with her weathered one. Good. Clara deserves good man. Not rich man. Good man. You understand difference? I do, he said quietly. I'm learning. But our careful progression toward something real was shattered on a cold January evening. I was working late, cataloging a series of Byzantine icons, when Andrei burst into the conservation room, his face ashen, Maxime close behind him. Pack whatever you need, he said, his voice tight with controlled panic. Now! We're leaving. I stood, alarm flooding through me. What's happened? Oleg Volkov has your grandmother. The world tilted. Oleg Volkov. I'd heard the name whispered in the circles Andrei moved in. A rival, brutal and ruthless. Someone even Andrei spoke of with wary respect. What do you mean he has her? My voice came out too high, too thin. Andrei's hands gripped my shoulders, his gray eyes burning with fury and fear. He took her from the facility 2 hours ago, called me, said if I want her back alive, I need to give him access to my shipping routes, my connections in customs, everything. Why? I whispered, though I already knew. Because he knows you matter to me. Because he's been watching, waiting for leverage. Andrei's jaw clenched. I'm sorry, Clara. This is my fault. I should have protected her better, should have seen this coming. Maxim spoke up. Boss, we need to move. Volkov gave us until midnight. What happens at midnight? I demanded. No one answered, which was answer enough. What are you going to do? I asked Andrei, searching his face. Whatever I have to, he said grimly. But first, I'm getting you somewhere safe. Volkov wants me off balance, distracted. I won't give him the satisfaction of having both of you. I pulled away from his grip. I'm not going anywhere until Grandma Vera is safe. What's your plan? Andrei exchanged glances with Maxim. We negotiate. Give him something. But not everything. Buy time to find where he's holding her. And if he doesn't negotiate? If he hurts her? His expression turned to stone, cold and deadly. This was the man who'd built an empire on fear, who'd done things he couldn't undo. Then I remind Oleg Volkov why people learn to fear the Petrov name. I grabbed my coat. I'm coming with you. Absolutely not. She's my grandmother, I said fiercely. My family. You don't get to shut me out of this. We stared at each other, wills clashing. Finally, he nodded once. You stay in the car. You do exactly what Maxim tells you. The first sign of danger, you leave. Understood? Understood. The meeting was set for a warehouse in the industrial district. Andrei made me stay in the car with Maxim while he went inside, flanked by 2 other men whose faces I didn't recognize. He'll get her back, Maxim said, perhaps sensing my terror. Mr. Petrov takes care of his own. I'm not his own, I said automatically. Maxim gave me a look that suggested I was fooling no one. He hasn't looked at anyone the way he looks at you in all the years I've worked for him. You're his own, Ms. Sokolov, whether you've admitted it yet or not. Time crawled. 20 minutes. 30. I was about to demand Maxim let me out when gunshots cracked through the air. Sharp, decisive, terrifying. Stay down! Maxim shoved me low, his weapon already drawn. More shots. Then silence. Thick and oppressive. The warehouse door burst open and Andrei emerged, carrying Grandma Vera in his arms. Her face was pale, her clothing disheveled, but she was alive, conscious, already scolding him in rapid Russian. I was out of the car before Maxim could stop me, running toward them. Babushka. Klarushka, I'm fine, she insisted, though her hands trembled. This foolish boy, he made such trouble. Shot one of those terrible men in the leg. Can you imagine? Andrei transferred her gently to my arms. His face was spattered with blood that I prayed wasn't his knuckles split and raw. Is she hurt? I demanded. Shaken but unhurt. They never touched her, knew better than to damage the merchandise. His voice was cold, distant, the warmth I'd come to know buried under layers of violence. And Volkov? We'll think twice before using innocent old women as leverage. He turned to Maxim. Get them both to the safe house. I need to finish this. Finish what? I asked, but he was already walking back toward the warehouse. Maxim took my arm gently. Come, Ms. Sokolov. Let him do what needs doing. What's he going to do? What he's always done, Maxim said quietly. What he swore to your grandmother he'd stop doing. But for you, for her, he'll do it one more time. The safe house was actually a luxury apartment in a building Andrei owned, secured by his people, comfortable but isolated. Grandma Vera fell asleep quickly after I'd examined her thoroughly, her exhaustion finally catching up to adrenaline. I sat by her bedside, waiting for Andrei, terrified of what he might have done, what he might have become again in the space of hours. He arrived near dawn, moving quietly into the room. The blood was gone, washed away, but exhaustion lined his face. He sank into the chair beside me without speaking. Tell me, I whispered. Volkov will never threaten anyone I care about again, he said flatly. I made sure of that. How? You don't want to know, Clara. Trust me. But I reached for his damaged hands, holding them gently despite the raw knuckles. Yes, I do. If we're going to keep doing this, whatever this is, I need to know what you're capable of. He looked at me, something breaking in his expression. I gave everything to the police. Names, accounts, shipping manifests, connections. Everything Volkov wanted and more. Enough to dismantle his entire operation, and probably mine too. He laughed bitterly. I traded immunity for information. Witness protection for your grandmother if she wants it. A clean break from the life I built on blood and fear. I stared at him, stunned. You destroyed everything. Not everything, he said, his voice rough. I kept what mattered. You. Her. The chance to become someone worthy of the prayers my mother wasted on me. I pulled him into my arms, feeling him tremble with exhaustion and relief and terror at what he'd done. It's not over, he whispered against my hair. The police will want testimony. Volkov's allies will want revenge. My own people will feel betrayed. Everything I built is going to come crashing down. Then we'll build something new, I said fiercely. Something clean. Something your mother would be proud of. Clara. Marry me, I interrupted, the words surprising even me. He pulled back, searching my face. What? Marry me. Not because of tonight, not because you saved Grandma Vera, but because somewhere between a rosary and a prayer, I fell in love with a man trying desperately to be better than he was. And I want to be there when he finally becomes that man. Andrei kissed me then, desperately, his hands cradling my face as if I were something precious and fragile. You're insane. Probably, I agreed. Is that a yes? It's a promise, he said. To be worthy of you. To do the work, no matter how hard. To build the life my mother prayed I'd find. Then yes, I whispered. Yes to all of it. The legal proceedings began 3 weeks later. Andrei had secured immunity in exchange for his testimony against Oleg Volkov and the entire network of corruption that had sustained both their organizations for decades. But immunity from prosecution didn't mean immunity from consequences. The media descended like vultures. Petrov heir turns state's evidence. Mafia prince betrays empire. The headlines were brutal, the photographs worse. Andrei in handcuffs for his initial detention. Grainy surveillance photos of meetings he'd attended, transactions he'd facilitated. My phone rang constantly, reporters wanting comments, colleagues from the archives asking if I was safe, concerned questions about my judgment in working for that man. Only Grandma Vera remained steadfast. "He saved my life," she said simply when I visited her, now in a new facility with security Andrei had insisted on. "Whatever he did before, he is trying to be good now. This is what matters." Andrei moved through it all with grim determination. He'd sold his properties, liquidated accounts, established trusts for restitution to victims of Volkov's organization. Everything he'd built was being dismantled piece by piece, voluntarily surrendered. "I can't give you the life I promised," he said one evening as we sat in the modest apartment he'd moved into, his collection of icons the only luxury that remained. "The brownstone is gone, sold to pay settlements. My assets are frozen. I'm going to be known as the man who betrayed his own." "You betrayed criminals," I corrected. "There's a difference. Not to them. Not to the people who considered me one of their own." I took his hands, scarred now from the fight to save Grandma Vera, still healing. "Then we'll find new people. Build a new community. One that doesn't require blood money to maintain." He pulled me into his lap, burying his face in my neck. "I don't deserve you." "Probably not," I agreed, making him laugh despite everything. "But you're stuck with me anyway." The trial of Oleg Volkov began in April. Andrei testified for 3 days, laying out the structure of the organization, the corruption of officials, the violence that had sustained it all. He never flinched, never tried to minimize his own role, accepting responsibility for decisions that had cost lives. I sat in the courtroom every day, Grandma Vera beside me, a visible reminder of what Andrei had chosen over loyalty to his former world. Volkov's lawyer tried to destroy Andrei's credibility, painting him as a traitor, a liar, someone who'd turned on his own to save himself. On the 3rd day, I was called to testify. The prosecutor, a sharp woman named Detective Donovan, who'd been investigating Volkov for years, asked me about the Rosary, about the letters, about how I'd come to work for Andrei Petrov. "Ms. Sokolov, you're aware of Mr. Petrov's criminal history?" "I'm aware he made choices he regrets," I said carefully. "I'm also aware he spent the last 6 months trying to undo the damage those choices caused. Some would say he only cooperated to avoid prosecution himself. Some would be wrong." I met her eyes steadily. Andrei Petrov walked away from everything, money, power, connections, to ensure my grandmother's safety and to expose the people who threatened her. That's not self-preservation. That's sacrifice. Volkov's lawyer stood. "Objection. The witness is emotionally involved with the defendant." "I'm engaged to Andrei Petrov," I said before the judge could rule. "And yes, I love him. But that doesn't make what I'm saying untrue. He chose to cooperate before any immunity deal was offered. He chose to protect an innocent woman over protecting himself. That speaks to character, regardless of his past." The judge allowed the testimony. That evening, the news cycle shifted slightly. Petrov's fiancée Siua defends testimony, love or loyalty, the woman who believes in a reformed mobster. I ignored it all, focused only on Andrei, on the exhaustion etched in his face, the weight of exposure and judgment he carried daily. "They're going to hate me for this," he said that night as we lay together in the dark. "Everyone in that world. The people I grew up with. The families I considered allies. I've broken every code I was taught." "You broke codes built on violence and exploitation," I reminded him. "That's not betrayal. That's evolution." He was quiet for a long moment. "My mother would have cried through all of this. cried and prayed and believed somehow it would work out. Then let's honor that faith, I said. Let's make sure it does work out. The verdict came down in late May. Oleg Volkov was convicted on multiple counts: racketeering, conspiracy, murder, life in prison without parole. His organization was dismantled, its assets seized, dozens of arrests made. Andrei's sentence came separately: 2 years probation, extensive community service, permanent surrender of his business licenses. He'd never be able to operate in his former world again. He took the news without expression, but I saw the relief in his eyes when the judge confirmed no prison time. "You get a second chance, Mr. Petrov," the judge said. "Don't waste it." We married quietly 3 weeks later in a small Russian Orthodox church, Father Gregory presiding. Grandma Vera cried through the entire ceremony, clutching her own rosary. Not the mother-of-pearl one, which had a different destiny, but a simple wooden one Andrei had given her. "Your mother is smiling in heaven," she told Andrei as she embraced him after the ceremony. "She prayed for this, for you to find your way home to goodness. This girl, she is answer to prayers." Andrei looked at me across the modest reception. Just a few friends, people from my old job at the archives, Father Gregory, Grandma Vera in her wheelchair, Maxim who'd stayed loyal despite everything. "I don't know how to be good yet," he'd confessed the night before the wedding. "I don't know how to live without the power, the control, the fear." "Then we'll learn together," I'd said. One prayer at a time. Now, watching him interact with the handful of guests who'd chosen to celebrate with us, I saw glimpses of the man his mother had believed existed beneath the violence. Gentle with Grandma Vera, respectful with Father Gregory, quietly grateful to Maxim for his continued loyalty. That night, in the apartment that was now ours, I found him standing before the icon of the Virgin Mary, the one from his collection that meant the most to him. "What are you thinking?" I asked, wrapping my arms around him from behind. "That I'm 34 years old and finally learning to pray honestly." He turned to face me, his hand settling on my waist. "That I married a woman who sees better in me than I've ever seen in myself. That I'm terrified of failing her." "You won't," I said with more confidence than I felt. "Because I won't let you, and neither will she." I gestured to the rosary displayed in a shadow box on the wall, his mother's rosary, the beads that had brought us together, preserved now as a reminder of prayers answered in unexpected ways. "I've been thinking about something," Andrei said slowly. "About what to do with my life now that the old one is gone. About how to make restitution that actually matters." "Tell me." His eyes lit with something I hadn't seen before. Not the cold calculation of his former life, but genuine excitement, purpose. "What if we created something? A foundation, maybe. Something that finds lost family heirlooms, religious artifacts, things that mattered to people who couldn't protect them, and returns them to descendants, to the families they belonged to." I stared at him, the elegance of the idea taking my breath. "Like the rosary." "Like the rosary," he confirmed. "I have the connections, the knowledge of the black market, where these things end up. You have the expertise to authenticate and restore them. Together, we could give back what people like me took. Andrei, that's..." "Penance," he finished. "Real penance, not just money thrown at charity auctions. Actually undoing harm, piece by piece." I kissed him, tasting hope and determination. "Your mother would love this." "Then let's do it in her name," he said. "The Nadia Petrova Foundation for Restoration and Return. Help me build something worthy of her prayers, Clara. Help me become the man she believed I could be." "I will," I promised. "We will." 18 months after our wedding, The Nadia Petrova Foundation opened its doors in a converted warehouse in the historic district. The space was beautiful: high ceilings, natural light, secure vaults for storing artifacts, a conservation lab that rivaled my old workspace at the archives, and a gallery where we could display pieces temporarily before returning them to families. The work was everything Andre had envisioned and more. Using his knowledge of how stolen artifacts moved through underground markets, combined with my restoration expertise, we'd already successfully returned 43 items to their rightful owners in our first year. An icon stolen from a Greek family during World War II, recovered from a private collection in Geneva. A Torah scroll that had survived the Holocaust, found in an estate sale, and returned to the descendants of the rabbi who'd hidden it. Rosaries, crosses, prayer books, each one a story of loss and recovery, of prayers finally answered. But the centerpiece of our foundation remained the same. In the center of our gallery, displayed in a custom case designed to protect while allowing full viewing, was the mother-of-pearl rosary that had brought us together. Beside it, a plaque bore the words I'd spoken to Andre that first night. "Because someone needed to return this to you." And beneath, an addition Andre had insisted on, "In memory of Nadia Petrova, whose prayers built bridges across years of silence. May we honor her faith by returning to others what was lost." The Foundation's opening gala was attended by a surprising mix of people: Detective Donovan, who'd become an ally in our work; Father Gregory, who blessed the space; families who'd received returned heirlooms and wanted to express gratitude; journalists documenting our work; and even some of Andre's former associates who'd chosen legitimate paths after his testimony dismantled their organizations. I stood beside Andre as he addressed the crowd, my hand resting protectively over my abdomen, where our first child grew. A daughter, due in 4 months, who would carry both our names and her grandmother Nadia's middle name. "My mother prayed for my redemption every day for 15 years, Andre said, his voice carrying across the gallery. "She prayed with the rosary you see behind me, believing that faith could reach even a son who'd lost his way. She died before seeing those prayers answered." He paused, finding my eyes across the room. But prayers work in strange ways, across time and circumstance. They brought me a woman who saw worth in a lost cause. They brought me a second chance I didn't deserve. And they brought me here, to work that honors my mother's belief that beauty and faith can redeem even the worst sins. The crowd applauded, but I saw the tears in Grandma Vera's eyes as she sat in the front row, clutching the simple wooden rosary Andre had given her. After the speeches, as people mingled and examined the displayed artifacts awaiting return to families, a woman approached me hesitantly. She was elderly, perhaps 80, with kind eyes and hands that trembled slightly. "Ms. Petrova?" she asked, using my married name. "Yes?" "I'm Anna Kozlova. I heard about your foundation through a friend. I wonder." She reached into her bag and withdrew a photograph, aged and creased. "If you might help me find something." The photograph showed a young woman wearing a distinctive pendant, a gold locket with intricate filigree work, and what appeared to be a tiny Orthodox cross, inset with garnets. "My mother's locket," Anna explained. "It was all she had when she fled Russia in 1947. She wore it every day until she died in 1985. My brother sold it after her death, said we needed the money. I've regretted not fighting harder to keep it every day since." I studied the photograph, my mind already working through possibilities. "Do you know where your brother sold it?" "An estate buyer in Brooklyn. That's all I know." I took her information, promising nothing but to try. "This is exactly what we do, Miss Kozlova. Find what was lost, return it to those who cherish it. I can't guarantee success, but I can promise we'll search." After she left, Andre found me still holding the photograph. "New case?" "A locket. Probably sold 40 years ago, could be anywhere." I looked up at him. "But we'll find it, won't we?" He smiled, the expression transforming his face from the hard mask of his former life to to something warm and genuine. We'll try. That's all we can do. Try to repair what was broken, piece by piece. That evening, after the guests had left and we'd locked up the foundation, Andre and I stood before the rosary display one final time. "Do you think she knows?" I asked softly. "Your mother. Do you think she knows what became of her prayers?" Andre's hand found mine, his thumb tracing circles on my palm. "I think prayers don't die when the person praying does. I think they echo forward, creating ripples we can't always see." He placed his other hand on my stomach, feeling our daughter move. "I think she's here somehow, in the work we do, in the family we're building, in the life we're trying to live right." I leaned into him, feeling the solid warmth of his presence, the man who'd emerged from the wreckage of his former life like something forged in fire. "Read to me," I said, "from her letters." He knew which ones I meant. We'd kept the originals in our home, in a special case, and some nights we'd read them together, finding new meanings in words written long ago. Tonight he chose the final letter, the one that still made us both cry. "When you are ready, when you need to find your way home, it will be here waiting. As will I, for as long as God grants me breath. All my love, Mama." She was right, I whispered. It was waiting. All of it. The rosary, the prayers, the way home. She believed even when you couldn't. She believed enough for both of us. Andre agreed. And somehow, through you, I learned to believe too. We drove home through the city, passing churches and mosques and temples, all the places where people gathered to pray, to hope, to believe in something greater than themselves. Our apartment was modest compared to the brownstone Andre had once owned, but it was filled with things that mattered. Icons rescued from his dismantled collection, books on theology and art history, photographs of Grandma Vera and the family we were building, and everywhere, reminders of prayers answered. That night, as we prepared for bed, Andre reached for the simple rosary he kept on his nightstand. Not the mother of pearl one, which belonged now to the foundation and the memory of his mother, but a new one, hand-carved olive wood from Jerusalem that Father Gregory had blessed. "Teach me the prayers again," he said, as he did some nights when the weight of his past pressed too heavily. I settled beside him, our fingers intertwining around the beads. "Oče naš, ije esi na nebesek." Our Father, who art in heaven. We prayed together in Russian, the language of his mother, of Grandma Vera, of a heritage neither of us wanted to lose. We prayed for guidance, for strength, for the families we served, for our daughter who would be born into a different world than the one Andre had known. When we finished, Andre pulled me close, his hand resting over our daughter's constant movement. "I love you, Clara Petrova," he said, "for seeing who I could become when I couldn't see it myself, for believing in prayers and miracles and second chances, for giving me a reason to be better every single day." "I love you too," I whispered, "for doing the work even when it's hard, for honoring your mother's faith by living it, for choosing redemption over resignation." Our daughter kicked, strong and insistent, as if agreeing with us both. "What should we tell her about her grandmother Nadia?" Andre asked. "About the prayers that brought us together?" I smiled in the darkness. "We tell her the truth, that her grandmother was a woman of extraordinary faith, that she prayed for her son with beads like moonlight, that her love reached across years and silence and death itself to bring together two people who needed each other, that prayers work in mysterious ways, building bridges we can't always see, and that her mother spent her last $200 on a dead woman's rosary because some things matter more than money," Andre added, humor warming his voice. "That too," I agreed, laughing. We fell asleep like that, wrapped around each other and our unborn daughter. beneath icons of saints who'd also struggled and failed and found redemption. In an apartment filled with modest comfort instead of luxury, but rich with purpose. The foundation would open again tomorrow. There would be families waiting, artifacts to authenticate, searches to conduct, prayers to honor through action. But tonight, there was just us. Two people who'd found each other through the most unlikely of circumstances, building a life on faith and forgiveness, and the stubborn belief that broken things could be made whole again. In the shadow box on our bedroom wall, lit by a small lamp that never went dark, the mother-of-pearl rosary Andre had given me from the Foundation's collection glowed softly. Not his mother's rosary, but one similar, one we'd recovered and returned to a family in Queens who'd wept with gratitude. It was our reminder, every morning and every night, of why we did this work, of what prayers could accomplish, of how lost things could find their way home. And somewhere, I like to imagine, Nadia Petrova smiled and nodded and whispered another prayer, this one of gratitude for answers she'd never lived to see but had always believed would come. Because that's what mothers do. They pray. They believe. They hold faith like beads between their fingers, smooth from use, warm from hands, glowing with the light of love that never dies. They pray until the prayers are answered. And sometimes, miraculously, they are.